White people will crown Eminem king because he sold the most records out of all rappers. But when we go into everyday life of black people, the people who are the originators of this shit, we don't fucking listen to Eminem. Okay? We don't listen to Eminem. We don't go to the gym and turn on Eminem. We don't turn on Eminem on the way to the club.
When you play a trap record from your car, you're sending out a message into the world. When you play a mumble rap record, when you play a record that has to do with partying and being jovial and taking drugs and having sex and indulging, if you're playing that in your car, you're letting the world know something about yourself. And I think you're telling the world that you're an extroverted person. You're a person who likes to go outside. You're a person who sort of generates their energy by being in groups, by being in social situations. You like the approval of others, and that pretty much guides you through your day. So if you're listening to Eminem's music, I would say that if you're going to listen to something that's very, and this isn't, vulnerability is not exclusive to Eminem. That's not what I'm saying. If you're listening to music that's vulnerable, you can be listening to Drake. You can listen to Kendrick Lamar. You can listen to J. Cole. You can listen to Mick Jenkins. It doesn't matter. Vulnerable music is less likely to be played in a car or in a social setting as opposed to music that's extroverted, music that includes things that we can basically all agree upon, right? We all want more money. Everybody wants to have sex. Everybody wants to have a good time. Everybody wants to say fuck the haters. Everybody wants to be happy. But Eminem's music is triggered more towards a introverted person. So it's this sort of headphone music that only gets played when you're working out, because Eminem, does all this motivational music, which doesn't always hit, but sometimes he's successful in his motivational endeavors, But if you think about Eminem's discography, I mean, you think about everything after the Eminem show, if you remember Encore, Relapse, Recovery, from that point on, Eminem's music changed because obviously he went into sobriety and we can have a conversation about Eminem's music being terrible after he got sober, but his music has gone towards sobriety. And with that, there's that vulnerability that I mentioned. And by the way, the vulnerability and the extroversion, both of those combinations is what makes an artist like Drake thrive, because Drake can go and make those introspective records about his ex, about his life, about his insecurities, but he can also make those dance records. He can also make those top 40 records, so he can cross over. So, he gives you that introversion and that extroversion, all in one package. Now, Eminem, since he's gone towards sobriety, everything is about loss. Everything is about vindication. Everything is about being resilient. So the music doesn't really lend itself to social situations, because that's something that you wouldn't want to admit yourself. You don't want to admit if you're going through something and you're playing a record that's very personal to you. You're not going to want to share that with people. So the fact that your music isn't being played in certain areas is in no way, shape, or form a shot towards you as an artist. It just means that your music is intended for a different audience member who's in a particular point in their life, and maybe even in their day, because you can find yourself listening to a song that's very jovial and very extroverted, and then maybe late at night you listen to something that has a little bit more meat on the bone and it's a bit more deeper. So Lord Jamar's recent comments about Eminem's music, I mean, Lord Jamar sort of always had it out for Eminem. I mean, he's been a protector of the culture for quite some time now, and I know that people don't like Lord Jamar because he comes across as just an angry old head. But if not Lord Jamar, who else do we have? I know you guys have all accepted Joe Budden but you've mostly accepted Joe Budden because he sort of commodified himself, and now he is part of the industry more than ever. And that's not the right reason to accept somebody. You accept somebody because of their principles. You accept somebody because of what they stand for and what they're passionate about. And I think Lord Jamar is extremely passionate about this topic. I know he had those comments several years ago on Vlad TV where he made the house of hip hop, and every white person is a guest in the house of hip hop. That's protection. That's being old enough to know that other music genres have been co-opted by people other than us, and they turn it into something that it wasn't originally, and then they sell it as if it's their own. That's what happens with appropriation. That's the danger of all this. That's what happened with rock and roll. It's what happened with blues. It's what happened with most music genres. So Lord Jamar is just basically being a guard dog, basically. I mean, but in this situation, there's really nothing to guard, because it's not like Eminem's music is larger than it ever was. He's just sick of hearing Eminem. And I can understand that, because I'm a person that's always been an Eminem fan. I think that Eminem is top 10, regardless of what you have to say. He is top 10 because from a technical standpoint, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that can do more from a technical aspect than Eminem, and as a fan, you don't like hearing that because maybe you have something against the music that Eminem makes now, and I can understand that. But if you sat down with people who write music, if you sat down with people who are producers, they can see the different layers of what Eminem does. The casual listener isn't going to pick up on this. And growing up, Eminem was somebody who was very technically sound, and just for that reason, he should be top 10 at the very least. Lord Jamar's comments were basically, I think, an attack on just mainstream white opinions, because he said, white people would most likely say that Eminem is number one because he sold the most records. I mean, that's a bit of a straw man argument. He kind of straw man the whole thing by just saying, well, white people just think that, because you sell the most records. I don't think so. I think the culture pretty much, our culture thinks that people are better because they sell more. I don't think that's something that's exclusive to whites. I think that's something that we mostly believe. Somebody deserves a seat at the table simply because they sell a lot of records, or simply because they stream a high amount of songs. So I think that's a bit of a straw man argument. I think that people consider Eminem to be one of the best because of what I mentioned. It's part of the reason why Eminem is losing his mind artistically. He looks at rap as if it's intellectual. He looks at rap as if it's something that you can grow, a muscle that can be exercised, and in due time it expands and it's able to do a lot more. That's why you see Eminem experimenting with all sorts of different deliveries. It sounds basic at times, sometimes it sounds complex. I think that Eminem just sits in his house and he sits around just like a madman, and he thinks of different ways and different patterns, because he's doubling down on something that he was once great at, but the reception is no longer the same. So he feels he has to overcompensate and really prove to us that he can do something that we already know he could do. But I just want to make that point that music is intended for different people. And if you are playing music in social settings, then it is more than likely that music is not introspective. It's not very vulnerable unless you're playing an R&B record. That just goes into the umbrella of love and vulnerability and relationships and loss and breakups, and that's a bit different. But when it comes to rap, you only play something in social situations that have to do with superficialities, because that's the safest thing. That's your safest bet. You like to have the approval of others, and you like conformity. You like things to stay exactly the way that they are. Eminem's music is extremely vulnerable. Kendrick Lamar's music is extremely vulnerable. Many rappers that you know and like today make very vulnerable records, and it is simply intended for the headphones because it is a personal listen.